now we're getting there. You look like you're on the moon. And you just ate something. But you're fuzzy.
Okay. Yes.
You look very fuzzy and a little bit confused.
No, because of the background.
Oh, what? Okay.
Because the background that we that is
Oh
in
gosh. All right. I don't have anything like that.
Really?
Nothing fancy. I'm just home.
No, this goes with the zoom option. It's not.
Oh, I don't know. Okay. I don't have time for that. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Welcome to.
If you keep on like that, I'm going to just show pictures of my grandchildren. How's that?
Do I look funny to you? Okay, so welcome to this meeting, Mr. Krashen, and you can start your presentation. Welcome to first of all, welcome to the Moroccan community. We are very
thank you
happy
very
to
much.
have.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We are very happy to have you today with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually tonight, but you have still
good.
Yes,
very good.
But you have you know. I said that we are very happy to have you today. The Moroccan community of English teachers, and would like you to to start your presentation anytime you want.
Okay, I am ready to begin. 1, 2, 3, go. Let me tell you what I want to do today. I have several goals. The first one, of course, is I want to tell you what we've been doing for the last 45 years of research. Can you imagine that? It's been that long.
Yes.
And I hope that the information will make your teaching life much easier. And I hope it'll make it more efficient. Your students will learn more, and I hope they'll be happier. Number 3, I want to save you some money. Everything is too expensive now. So I want to see what I can. And this you can profit from. First of all, if you want professional reading material, it's very difficult to get, and it's extremely expensive. I cannot afford to subscribe to the professional journals anymore. I can't afford it. I don't have the money. Nobody I know has enough money. I can't buy books. In fact, I'm not publishing any more books because nobody can buy them because they cost too much money. So I want to solve that problem. I am now publishing all of my papers. I've been very busy. I've been publishing all my papers in what are called open access journals. Open access journals are free to the author, free to the reader. You can download them. I've been doing that for several years now. In fact, since the virus came, I've been doing a lot of work, and I've published, I think in the last 2 months, about 10 articles in open access journals, and you can read them all for free. First of all, let me clear my throat. First of all, I announce them on Twitter, so you can find them all. I keep people informed. Second, they are all on the internet. They're at sdkrashen.com. D as in David, my middle name, SD Krashen. They're all free download. You can download them. You can share them with your friends. You can share them with anybody except Donald Trump. He won't read them anyway, okay? Don't ask my permission. Don't ask my permission. Just do it. Share them with anyone. Use them for colleagues, students. This is the way all science will be soon, and it has to be. Also, my papers are all short. Let me quote a scientist. recently said this. We have to write short papers. When you ask someone the time, you don't want a history of the wristwatch. And that's what my colleagues are doing. The papers are so long in our profession, I can't read them all, and I have more time than most people. And I know the material, I can understand it. But so papers are free and they're short, sdkrashen.com. Please take advantage of us and see if you can, if you publish papers, publish in open access journals, and we will save the profession together. Okay, I want to go through the fundamentals. This is the traditional outline of a talk. I want to go through the theory, hypotheses, and talk about application, okay? Everything begins with some definitions: acquisition and learning. We think that people have two different ways of getting better in a language. You can acquire a language, you can learn a language, and they're profoundly different. Acquisition, as you may have heard, is subconscious. While it's happening, you don't know it's happening. You think you're reading a book, having a conversation, listening to Steve Krashen give a lecture, but at the same time, you might be acquiring, and you probably are. Also, when you're finished acquiring, you're not always aware that anything has happened. The knowledge is stored subconsciously in your brain. We've all had experiences like this. I can give you very good evidence that I think you'll agree with. When you hear someone make a mistake in English, can you always tell exactly what rule was broken? No, I can't either. I have a PhD in grammar. Can you imagine that? And I know lots about English grammar. I can't tell. Instead, I have a feeling something was wrong, but I can't quite put my finger on it. That's acquisition. That's what we're talking about. It happens all the time. Okay, that's number one, language acquisition. Number two, language learning. Language learning is what we do in school, unfortunately. Conscious knowledge of language. When we talk about rules, when we talk about grammar, we're usually talking about learning, knowing the names of things. When you use this, when you use that. A noun is the place of a person, place, thing, or idea. The subject and the verb are supposed to agree. This is learning. Error correction is supposed to help learning. You make your mistake, someone corrects you, you change your idea of what the rule is, okay? For example, let's say you're speaking French and you say, j'ai allé beaucoup de fois, and the other person says, no, it's je suis allé. Then you think, oh yeah, it's conjugated with être, not avoir. This is how we change our conscious knowledges of rules. Important. The language, and this is good news, the language acquisition device, the way we acquire language, never stops. We can do it our entire lives. It doesn't stop when you're 10 years old, 13 years old, 20 years old, 70 years old, and in my case, 79 years old. I'm still doing very well with languages. I work on other languages every day, and it's still a lot of fun and doing well. This is great news. Acquisition is something the brain does very, very well. We're really good at it. Conscious learning, the brain is very bad at it. And that's why we suffer so much in language classes. We suffer teaching, we suffer as students. Okay, that's number one, that's the big one. Second hypothesis kept me very busy in the 1970s, and we had a lot of fun with it. It's called the natural order hypothesis, and it says we acquire, not learn, but acquire the rules of language in a predictable order. Some things come early, some things come in the middle, some things come late. Good example, one of the first grammatical items to learn is the progressive marker, ing. John is playing the violin. What's that noise? He's playing the violin. That one's one of the first to be acquired. The third person singular is late acquired. It can take a long time.
Yes.
Now, the order of acquisition is not dependent on simple to hard. The third person singular seems like a very easy rule. It's easy to understand, but it comes very late. The ing marker is complicated. It can mean immediate future. It can mean ongoing action. It's a little bit complicated. That one is early acquired. Children acquire the ing marker about a year before they get third person singular. For adults, as you know, the third person singular may never come. We all know people who speak English quite well and who drop the S in the third person singular. Very interesting. Let me tell you about my friend, Masayoshi Shibatani. I haven't seen him in a long time, but we got along very well. Matt Shibatani was an MIT Chomsky-trained grammatical theory expert. His specialty was Japanese grammar. That's his first language, but he also knew a tremendous amount about English. His office was right near mine at the university. Whenever I had a question on grammar, I would go ask him. And he always knew the answer. He knew grammar better than anyone I ever met. Third person singular, he made mistakes. In writing, he always got it right. He could think about the rule. In conversation, sometimes he would let it go. He knew the rule. He had known the rule for 40 years. He learned it in school. He studied it. He's taught it. Now, if he doesn't get it in free conversation, that tells us the natural order is not dependent on simple to complex. It has its own logic. You can't change the order. That is remarkable. You can't change. You can't think, well, we'll teach the progressive early and we'll teach the third person singular later. No, it doesn't work that way. It will be acquired when your brain decides that it's ready. We can't change it. We can't hurry it up, etc. Back in 1980, I was very excited. I gave a paper at the TESOL Society in Los Angeles. I like to tell people there was standing room only. There were only 10 chairs in the room and 12 people came to my session. And I announced then, this was wrong, I announced we now have the secret of the syllabus. We have the natural order. Let's simply teach from early acquired to late acquired. We'll teach progressive early, third singular. No, the natural order is the result of acquisition and it cannot be changed and it does not obey our logic. It's different. Next hypothesis, very interesting, grammar. What about grammar? What about consciously learned rules? People sometimes talk about me and they say that Krashen does not believe in grammar teaching. That's not quite true. I would never forbid grammar teaching. If you want to teach grammar, go ahead. Some people like it, some people don't. My conclusion, though, from the research is teaching grammar is very hard to do. It's limited. It's hard to understand. It's hard to use. It's hard to remember. That's my position, and we should realize that. Let me state for you our now 3 conditions for use of conscious grammar. First of all, we think the only time you use it is when you're editing your own language. So if I say something and I think I might have made a mistake, I look at the sentence again in my mind's eye, think of the rule and apply it, which is very difficult to do. First of all, if you want to do that and you want to be accurate, you have to know the rule. Now, even the greatest linguists in the world don't know all the rules. I actually met Noam Chomsky in a webinar about a month ago. It was very exciting. We had a conversation. And if you go up to Professor Chomsky, and he knows more about English grammar than anyone in the world, I'm sure, more than anyone who's ever lived. If you say, how many rules of English do you and your colleagues know? What percentage have you acquired? And he'll say, we've only described small fragments of the language. There's a lot we don't know. We don't know the rules, etc. That's Chomsky. What if we go to people who do grammar textbooks, grammarians? How many rules do they know? Well, they know fewer than Chomsky. They study Chomsky's work and they put it into their books. So they know fewer rules. How about language teachers who love grammar? They teach it all the time. Do they know as many rules as the grammarians? No, they don't know all the rules in the textbooks. Our best students don't know all the rules and don't understand all the rules. And our not so good students know hardly any. So this is a huge constraint on grammar teaching. We don't know the rules. We know only a small part. Okay, if you want to apply rules and you're having a conversation, if you want to apply rules, you've got to be thinking about rules, not just thinking about what you're talking about. You've got to be concerned with correctness so you can monitor your speech, make sure you get the right rule. Now that's pretty hard to do and it's unnatural. It's kind of like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time. We're not set up to be able to do that. Also, you have to have time. In normal conversation, you don't have much time to drag up a rule, make sure you got it right, find the place to put it, stick it in, again, check, see if it's right. By the time you do that, it's really tough. I know what I used to do, and you can feel guilty because I'm sure you did this too, we all did. When I'm having a conversation in another language, a language I'm not real good at, I'm sometimes planning my next sentence while the other person is talking. Oh my, that puts you in big trouble. It's suicide. You take all this time to build a sentence, make it perfect, but you weren't listening. And you say something that's completely all wrong, completely irrelevant, has nothing to do with the conversation. So these are very, very hard conditions to meet. Let me repeat them and then I'll give you a surprising conclusion. If you want to use grammar, do it right. You got to know the rule. You got to be thinking about correctness. You've got to have time. In real life, that only happens in one condition. When you're taking a grammar test. That's it. Grammar test, you've studied the rules. You're thinking about correctness, it's a test. And you've got enough time, because they're usually written, to answer the questions, etc. Our research back in the late 70s, early 80s shows this. People don't use much grammar unless you give them a grammar test. And even then, it's not a lot. By the way, if you want to see my research on this, it's available for free, as everything else is, on my website, sdkrashen.com. It's in a book called Second Language Acquisition and Second Language Learning, and you can download that book for free. Please steal my work, give it away, okay? That's what it's for. And then we do the studies. We found out when people use grammar, when they don't, they hardly use it at all. Now, I use grammar, and so do you, under rare conditions, but we consider these to be reasonably important. There's some parts of English, even though I'm a native speaker, and I'm very well read, as you can imagine, there's some rules of English that we teach in school that I have learned them, but I haven't acquired them. And there are places that are considered very important. If you make a mistake there, it means you're uneducated. For example, the difference between its and its, ITS and IT apostrophe S. I am convinced that this rule is leaving the English language. It's disappearing, it's dying, which is why we make mistakes. If I want to get that right, I have to look it up to make sure. Now, teachers take this very seriously. And if you're writing a letter to someone, it's a good idea to go to your spell check, your corrector, and make sure you've got it right. The interesting thing that happens to me, and I'm sure this happens to you, I'll look up the spelling of a word, and you know what the computer gives you a choice of 4 options, and you choose the right one. I always know which one is correct. Because I've read so much, I have partially acquired it. That means we kind of know these things, but we've acquired it, but we haven't finished the learning part. Don't worry, wait another 100 years, those rules will be gone. Who and whom, lie and lay, its and its, etc. Okay, the big one, the Comprehension Hypothesis. I think I might take some time out and do a lesson with you. I want to show you how we acquire language. I'm going to give you 2 lessons. I've already told you what language, it's German. And I'll give you 2 lessons and you tell me which of the 2 you like better, okay?
Yes.
Here's lesson number 1. Wir werden jetzt anfangen, Deutsch zu lernen und ich möchte im Voraus sagen, dass nach meiner Meinung Deutsch ist eine sehr schöne Sprache und ich hoffe, dass Sie alle sehr viel Erfolg mit Deutsch haben werden. What do you think? Good lesson so far? You think if I kept talking to you like that, you'd pick up German? I doubt it. How about if I repeated it? Would that help? No, same thing. How about if I slowed down? You still wouldn't understand. Sometimes that helps. In this case, it wouldn't. How about if I wrote the sentence out on the wall of my office and I erased every fifth word and you guess what the word is? No. None of those things work, and you can see that now. Here's lesson number 2. Das ist meine Hand. Verstehen Sie das? Ja, Hand? Gut. Hier sind meine Ohren. Ohren, verstehen Sie das? Ohren. Ich habe 2 Ohren. 1, 2. 2 Ohren. Hier sind meine Augen. Augen. Ich habe 2 Augen. 1, 2. Ich sehe nicht. Meine Brillen. Besser, viel besser. Okay, und hier sind meine Zigaretten. Ich habe meine Zigaretten. Nein, ich habe keine Zigaretten. Gut, Zigaretten sind nicht gut. If you understood lesson number 2, not every word, but more or less, I did everything necessary to teach you German. I will now share with you the most important concept I have learned about language, the best kept secret in the profession. We acquire language in one way and only one way, when we understand it. If you understood the second German lesson, not every word, but more or less, you acquired a little German. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't stop it. It's too late, in fact. You just acquired a little bit. It's already in your mind. It's already there. Language acquisition is involuntary. I think that's wonderful. And it's effortless. It takes no work, no hard work, grim determination. Simply get messages that you can understand. Now, a colleague of mine named Leonard Newmark, taught in San Diego, said something very interesting. I learned a lot from him, and a great deal of my theory comes from his work. Leonard said, if we want to acquire language this way, they have to pay attention to the messages. And if you want people to really pay attention to the messages, make them interesting. I want to push that harder. I want the messages to be so interesting that you forget that you're listening to another language or reading another language. I read every night in other languages. I've been doing this for years. And I make sure I choose books that are not only comprehensible, but exciting. So I forget that I'm reading in French or reading in Spanish or whatever. That's when language acquisition really happens. We want compelling, comprehensible input. Let me give you a story that illustrates this. I wrote this in an article called The End of Motivation, okay, because that's what I think is going on. It's a case history of the son of one of my former students, now my colleague. We'll call him Paul. That's what we call him in our article. His real name is Vincent. Paul grew up in the San Francisco area. The language of the home was Cantonese. Mom and dad were both from Hong Kong, so they spoke Cantonese at home. And one of their parents lived there, mommy and grandpa and grandma lived them. They spoke Cantonese, and every night the family would watch. Oh, let me back up. When the parents were starting their career, my student and her husband, they were busy a lot. They couldn't come home every night, so they hired a babysitter. The babysitter was a Mandarin speaker. Now, you know that Mandarin and Cantonese are different languages. They're not the same. They're dialects of the same language, kind of versions of the same language. But if you speak Cantonese, it doesn't mean you understand Mandarin. There's some shared vocabulary, okay? Like Hebrew and Arabic have shared vocabulary, no question. But it doesn't mean if you speak Hebrew, you understand Arabic, etc. Anyway, so the babysitter would come over, turn on the television set to cartoons in Mandarin. Paul would watch the cartoons. They were very good. My favorite is SpongeBob. It's so good.
I love cartoons. I love cartoons.
Oh, I love them. I think the people who do them are geniuses. Anyway, He started watching the cartoons thanks to the shared vocabulary and the wonderful cartoons, the plots, the visuals, and a little help from the babysitter. He started to understand them. He watched them for years. When he went to school, he started watching Mandarin television for children at home. When he got older in high school, his father would bring home 2 movies every weekend in Mandarin. The family watched the movies and they watched the news every night, okay? Today, Paul speaks Mandarin. He's pretty good. His mom has told me that when guests come over and they're Mandarin speakers, he does fine. They sometimes visit China, Beijing, they visit Taiwan, Taipei, that are all Mandarin speaking. He has no problem at all. It's comprehension that makes language acquisition work. No speaking habit, just watching TV, etc. We want the input to be extremely interesting or compelling. I have claimed the best input is just ecstatic, things you really like. So when I read in other languages, I choose books I really, really like. Generally, science fiction, that's what I like. And if the story is good, you forget what language it's in. Another fact about language acquisition before we talk about application, a couple little things. Language acquisition is gradual. It doesn't happen all at once. Research from the University of Illinois, Richard Anderson and his research team, brilliant work. They found this true of first language, and we have replicated it in second. If you're reading in your first and second language, and you come to a word you don't know, but the context helps you get an idea what the word is. You don't get it all at once. Each time you see the word or you hear the word and it's comprehensible, you get a little bit. You get about 5% each time you see it. That is so interesting. So it doesn't happen all at once. Now the complaint about this, and my colleagues say this is wrong, because context, you can't depend on context. You can't be sure. Well, for example, here's a favorite argument by my opposition. Let's say the word is finger, and you see a picture of a man pointing like that. They say, well, how do you know it's finger? Maybe it's hand. Maybe it means over there. Maybe it means, well, it could be. But if you get a little idea that it might be finger, that helps. And when you see it again, you gradually build up the whole meaning. Studies of this, when you see an unfamiliar word in print, this is studies done with children's books, 61% of the time, it gives you some help as to the meaning. Only 8% does it push you in the wrong direction. It has to be context, folks. We had the average native speaker knows about 50 to 150,000 words in his own language, in her own language. That's not 50,000 trips to the dictionary. It can't be done. This is the only way it can happen. And my goodness, Kim Aller, John Aller's brother, nice study of this. They looked at vocabulary size of people like you, bilinguals, trilinguals. Your vocabulary is not 150,000. It's more like 250,000. It's more like 300,000. We gain enormous vocabularies, and it's not one word at a time with flashcards, etc. Okay, let me now talk about application, and I'm going to give you the guide to application in terms of, I unplug the phone, that still keeps going, in terms of stages. The hypothesis is that everybody goes through predictable stages in developing in another language, and each stage helps the next one. I call this the conduit hypothesis. It's a conduit to the next. The first stage in first and second language acquisition is the same. Stories. It's always stories. This is how we develop our first language, and we'll see that the most interesting methods now for second language depend on stories in early stages. I gotta tell you, everybody likes stories. Everybody likes fiction. Fiction makes the world go around. Tell a good story and people listen to you.
Yes.
Not only do I want to help you save money and help you in your teaching life, but I also want to help you financially. No, I want to help. That's my son calling. I'll talk to him later. My son. Okay, I'm back with you. Maybe I'll accept it and tell him I'm doing. Danny, I'm doing a webinar, so I'll talk to you later, okay? Oh, sorry. No, you couldn't know. All right. Everybody, you just met my son. Okay.
Say hello to him.
There we go. You just met my son. My son is, when I ask people not to call me Dr. Krashen or Professor Krashen, I say that because I'm not the real Dr. Krashen. The
You
real
don't
Dr.
like to be
Krashen.
called doctor, no?
No, because my son is the real Dr. Krashen. He's a mathematics professor. Okay. He's much smarter than I am, that's for sure.
But you are a doctor in linguistics, no?
No, mathematics. He does algebra.
Okay. Yeah, yes.
Isn't that amazing? These
Yes.
mathematicians are, so the work is so interesting. Anyway, stories, everybody likes stories. I want to help you with your social life. Let's say you are invited to a party and you know you won't know anybody there. What do? My advice, go to the movies or get on TV or get on the television and watch the latest 3 movies. You can always start a conversation. Go up to anybody and say, oh, did you see Terminator 53? And someone will have seen it and they'll talk to you about it and they'll give you a good discussion. They'll talk about the plot, whether they liked the ending, whether the acting was good, etc. People understand literature, that's for sure. In first language, stories are the beginning. Children get their vocabulary, knowledge of the world, their basic grammar, so much of it from hearing stories. Children who hear more stories at school or at home always do better in school than children who don't hear stories. 95% of children like their mommy and daddy to tell them stories. The 5% who don't like it, their parents don't want to tell them stories. Okay, they're too busy or they just don't like it. Okay. In our field, in second language, the best methods today are based on stories. I'll talk about one of them, story listening, invented by my colleague Beniko Mason. What she does, and this is in beginning foreign language and second language, she prepares a story for the class. For intermediates, she generally takes it from Grimm's fairy tales. She chooses stories that are of universal interest, that have stood the test of time, maybe fairy tales for kids a little younger, etc. She tries to make the story comprehensible. She does it in several ways. Number 1, she identifies in advance the hard parts. She'll draw pictures illustrating the story. She may occasionally translate if she knows the same language that the students do. She will explain it using context. Very interesting results. I did a study, I was co-author with Dr. Mason in 2004. We did a study then on vocabulary this way, and it's been replicated now 4 different times since then. First of all, she simply showed students a story, told them a story, and gave them a test afterwards, delayed test 5 weeks later, of what they remembered from the new words. When she explained the words in class, she didn't tell them to study the words. She only told them the story. The explanation, the help, the drawing was to make the story more comprehensible, that's all. And on our first study, the students gained about 4 new words. She then did another condition, a story plus traditional grammar exercises. Draw a line from the word to the definition, write a sentence with the word, etc. Things we've done forever in language classes. That group actually gained more. They gained nearly 12 words. But, so see, exercises work. We need both. No. The story alone only took 15 minutes. When you added the exercise, it was more than an hour, 70 minutes. She then calculated how many words per minute in each condition. Story alone was much more efficient. They got nearly double the number of words than adding the exercises. So our conclusion from this, don't do grammatical exercises, don't do vocabulary exercises, tell another story. That's where it comes from, and it's there 5 weeks later, it's still there. So that's the beginning stage, is stories. One of the great things about it is that stories get students interested in reading, actually reading the stories or similar ones. So we move to reading the second stage. The crucial part of reading is pleasure reading. Reading that you want to read anyway. And to make sure this happens, we make them reading self-selected eventually. We know that self-selected reading, overwhelming research, is responsible for our vocabulary, our grammar, our writing style, our writing with good style and accuracy. It is responsible for a great deal of our spelling knowledge. Also, just plain knowledge, our knowledge of the world, history, all this science, etc. Reading for pleasure is the cause of many things we do in education. And we all do it, and we like it at the same time. Now, when kids finish the story part, they're not ready to do self-selected reading and read anything. So Dr. Mason has added a stage called guided self-selected reading. I think this is remarkable. I think this can make language teaching so much better. In this stage, students read a huge amount of very, very easy material. So easy, it's nearly effortless. If you look at graded readers in English, you all know about these, Oxford series, Longman series, they start at the very beginning level and they stay there for a while. They don't go rushing off to the next level, where most of it's incomprehensible. She keeps them reading easy graded readers for 2 years. Then they're ready. I got to tell you, you got to try this yourself. I've been trying it with Spanish. My Spanish is okay. It's my fourth language. I can have a conversation. I'm okay. A year ago, I read a complete novel in Spanish, Isabella Allende Zorro. It was very good. It was a little hard, but the story was so good, I kept going. Now I've decided to take Benico's advice, and I'm reading graded readers in Spanish, which are easy for me, okay? My goal is to read 100 of them. I've been reading them since I've been home with the coronavirus. I've been reading them every day. I've been reading them for over a month. I don't speak Spanish to people. I don't wander over to people and start talking. I basically read. That's all I really do. I've been getting better, and I know why. I have evidence. On Friday mornings.
Spanish?
Sorry?
Spanish and German.
Well, now I'm doing Spanish, okay? I can tell you about my languages later, okay? But let me finish this, and I'll tell you about my other languages. I'm always messing around with languages. It's so much fun. What I've been reading is Spanish. I go to the supermarket Friday morning because they have a special time only for old people. That's me. So you won't get sick because it's dangerous for people my age, okay? So I'm there with all these old people. And when I check out and I pay, the guy who I pay, always the same guy, he's Mexican-American. His English is perfect. But I told him the first day, I first spoke to him in Spanish, he answered me in English. And then I told him in Spanish, I said, my goal is to speak Spanish as well as you do. Me metes a hablar español como ustedes. He loved it. He's been speaking Spanish to me every day, every Friday for the last 6 weeks. Very nice guy. And I've noticed this. He's speaking more quickly. He's using more idiomatic Spanish because I'm getting better and he can feel that. That's a very good test of how well you're doing. So this stuff works. The problem is it's expensive. If you want to buy a graded reader, say in Spanish or in English, it's $5, $6, $7. If I'm going to read 100 of them, that's $500. That's a lot of money. So we're trying to get around this. Some of my colleagues are trying to create free graded readers. So all you need to do is download that. Won't that be fun? Anyway, my other languages, it all began with German. I was a music student. I was a piano student in the old days. And I went to Vienna to get advanced piano. And I didn't get along with my teacher. We didn't hit it off. But my parents allowed me, and I quit after about 2 months. I didn't like her, nothing. But I stayed there and I got really good in German. I went to German classes, etc., and did lots and lots of reading. After that, it was French, mostly through Canada. I speak Austrian, German, Canadian French, okay, and American English. And now it's Mexican Spanish. I also speak some Hebrew, but I'm not very good at it. I spent 5 months in Israel, and I got conversational. But there are lots I don't understand because there's no easy reading. That's the problem. I speak another Semitic language, Amharic, the language of Ethiopia. I was a teacher in Addis Ababa for 2 years. And I, again, got conversational Amharic. I did okay. I can do light conversation, but people all want to speak English to you, of course. And there was no easy Amharic to listen to. It was all native speaker. There was nothing to read, etc. I started Chinese 5 years ago, was it? And I had a wonderful teacher. We're still good friends. The problem is there's not much to read. She would teach this class in Wisconsin and send me the tapes, which is just wonderful. And I'm starting to read her latest book in Chinese. So I'm starting to get better. So that's, and it's what you, for people like me, this is very important to always be doing languages, always. I'm very encouraged by a guy named Steve Kaufman, Kaufman. He's what we call a polyglot. He speaks, I think, 17 languages now, and he's really good. I have heard him speak these languages. We've been in situations. We went out to dinner, Spanish, he was terrific. We had lunch with the Chinese faculty at the school, and they thought he was just amazing. I've heard him speak French in public, is excellent, etc. He says, get this, he has done 6 of his languages since the age of 62. Isn't that amazing? So there's no limit.
Great.
Yeah, aren't you? I can tell you're happy. You're happy to hear this. So am I. It's been very inspirational. So here's what we want. We want people to read, to do self-selected, but the warm-up to it is this graded self-selected where you get help from the teacher. The teacher helps you find texts. They're extremely easy. She has her students write a very short description of the story so you get an idea whether the book was hard, easy, etc. What do we do today, what we've done when I took classes, you can't do that. I took French in high school. I got a passing grade in French under the condition that I never study French again because he didn't want to be embarrassed. But it was really boring. Today, my French is not so bad. Anyway, I remember our book, the first chapter is a short reading passage and then grammar and vocabulary. And I tried that. I went first chapter, second chapter, third chapter when I started to do Spanish. And they're too hard. You get to chapter 4, it's full of all the new words, new grammar. What I did when I started Spanish, which got me interested in, I went to the university library and got 10 grammar translation books, but I read the story in chapter 1 of all of them. Then I read chapter 2 in all of them. Kind of boring, but at least it was comprehensible and it did really help. Let me give you some of the evidence for this. Just a couple of studies. One is one from Benico Mason. At the university she taught at in Japan, she gave a class in English. Anyone could come, beginning English, people from the community. The homework was reading graded readers, and in class she would do story listening, as you know. We kept track of how much people read, what they read. We had all the titles. And from that, we could estimate how much time they put in from average rates for people at different stages. The students read from anywhere, to 2 months, one case a year and a half. And we had the records for a lot of them and how much they read, what books. We also had their Toefl scores, a good international test of listening and reading. On the Toefl, the threshold, if you get 250, you're ready to start reading. And if you're really good, you could score 800, 900, etc. That's what we want for people to have. Here's what we found. For every hour you read, you gain more than a half a point on the Toefl. We found you get 0.6 points. Now Benico's finding it's more like 0.7. That means if you do this guided self-selected reading, any kind of reading, for 1 year, and you put in 2-3 hours a day of pleasurable reading, you can go all the way. You can go all the way from the beginning level of reading all the way to the top, just relaxing and reading pretty much what you want to read. What we've also found, this is a study from UK, from London, very interesting. These researchers, studies called Vocabulary from Adolescence to Middle Age. The researchers have been following the same group of people their whole lives. They started when they were babies, and they gave them different tests every few years and compared growth over years. Brilliant study. The last time they did it, their subjects were 43 years old. Same researchers. That could have been interesting. Wonder if they could still do it if they were young enough. Anyway, they gave them a vocabulary test. Native speakers of English vocabulary. The best predictor of vocabulary, yes, was reading more than anything else. And the best kind of reading? Fiction. Stories.
Yes.
Middlebrow fiction was the most powerful predictor, stronger than nonfiction. The United States government, in one of their many mistakes, the biggest one is now president, I don't care, I'll say that. In one of their many mistakes, emphasized fiction and nonfiction in schools, called the Common Core, disaster. They think, nonfiction is more exciting, better for you, harder, more academic, will train you for for good things, all wrong. It turns out fiction is much better for gaining not just vocabulary, but for academic vocabulary. My favorite study was done with science fiction. Researcher analyzed the vocabulary used in 1 million words of science fiction. The researcher found that you get a significant percentage of academic words useful in all academic professions, any science profession. Fiction is where we get it. Now I want to tell you about my cousin Evelyn. Nice story. I've been calling Evelyn every couple of days, telling her that I'm telling everyone all over the world about her. Evelyn was my mother's best friend, let me tell you. My mom and Evelyn had this wonderful niece-aunt relationship. So Evelyn was always at our house, and she was wonderful to me when I was a little boy. She's 93 now. And she told me that she always wanted to go to law school and learn more about the law. Her late husband, Marty, who was a wonderful fellow, had a law degree. And she was always astonished at how much he knew about everything. So she said, Stephen, I'm going to take a class in law. I said, Evelyn, you're 93. What are you doing this for? You want to know the easy way? Start reading novels. Read law novels by John Grisham. My feeling is if you read 10 novels by John Grisham, it's worth 1 year of law school. So she said, okay. I started buying and sending her law novels. I sent her one on audio the other day. I hope she likes it. She's been calling me up and she says, they're wonderful. The stories are wonderful. And I know so much more about the law. This is where we get our novels, mostly from stories. Now, this is the approach. Let me repeat it for you because it's wonderful. The first stage of reading is reading easy stuff, lots and lots of it. Things that seem ridiculously easy, and doing it for an hour or two a day for a couple of years, you'll be ready for authentic stuff and you won't be suffering. And many of the graphic novels in English are wonderful. Okay, they're getting better and better and better. They're starting to appear in Spanish, which I have a collection of. There's a couple in Chinese. I co-authored a couple. I think they're the only ones out. The ones from China are really too hard, in my opinion. They're beginning to grow in other languages. So my assignment for you, when you have some spare time, write us some graphic novels in Arabic. And if they're really easy, I'd love to read them, okay?
Yeah, with pictures.
Good picture, yes.
With
Absolutely.
pictures, I mean.
Pardon?
You mean writing with pictures, a book with pictures?
Absolutely, absolutely. Graphic means drawings. It can be cartoon, it can be real pictures that make it more comprehensible, okay? I think that all the comic books, all the graphic novels, the Spider-Man, all those should be made simple so students can read them. That would be wonderful. So you have a good time reading this stuff. Okay, so the current approach is we do lots and lots of easy reading, and then we make students ready to read authentic reading. Authentic reading means it's written for native speakers, not for students. We want to bring students to that point. That's our goal, not make them perfect. But after a few years of English, we want them to be able to read authentic English books that they like in their own field of interest. So if you like legal novels, read John Grisham. You want sports stories, I can find you sports stories, John Artunis. You like science fiction, read science fiction. You want romances, read romances, doesn't matter. Whatever you like and you're interested in. When you reach that point, we have met our goal. Our goal as educators is not to take you all the way, not to take students all the way so you're fantastic in English. We want to make it you good enough so you understand authentic English, then you get better on your own. That's much, much easier. Well, there's another problem here, which we can solve. There's the problem, the books are expensive, yes. Most people can't afford them. Most people don't have access to them. One of my colleagues, Nishana Shtari, is interested in Farsi, native language, and she's especially interested in young people who grow up with from Iranian families, and there are lots of them here in the Los Angeles area where I live, and they don't speak Farsi. The parents speak Farsi to them for the first year or two, and then they kind of give up. Or they send them to Farsi heritage language schools, and it's boring. They don't like it. So we are trying to solve this. The first step was to see if there's anything to read in Farsi for these kids to read. Dr. Ashtari has gone to several Farsi bookstores. There were some big ones, in fact, in Los Angeles. Some of them are gone, too bad. And the books are all boring. They're all, philosophical books, which is fine if you're older, serious novels, which are challenging even for native speakers. There's no light fiction, which can be very, very good, okay? She then did an experiment. She went to the local public library in an area where there were lots of Farsi-speaking families. And she went to the shelf and took down the books that were there in Farsi, mostly serious philosophical books and mostly how to improve your Farsi, okay? No good stories. She then did a test which we call the wear and tear study, invented by one of our colleagues, Jeff McQuillan. She looked at the books to see which parts of the book were torn, tarnished, where it looked like someone had been turning the pages. The books on Farsi, about 5 pages. That's all kids were looking at. That's all adults were looking at. No wonder they have nothing to read. We have found where literature is available, kids do acquire the heritage language, where there are interesting things to read. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful breakthrough. Our job is to work with libraries and encourage our colleagues in library science to expand the collections. I've been involved in a very bitter fight here in Los Angeles area. I fought a battle last night and I'm losing. They are defunding public libraries, taking away, they can't afford it, everybody's short of money, etc. And I quoted Isaac Asimov and said, when we're defunding libraries, it shows America has found another way of destroying itself. And that's really what's happening. Children of the economy is getting worse everywhere. Your economy, my economy, we know that, which means nobody can afford books anymore. And already children of poverty have no books in the home. The library is their only chance. So I'm talking Arabic as first language. I'm talking English as second language. I'm talking heritage languages, all the languages. The library is our only hope. It's the only chance. I've written several letters to the editor, to the Santa Monica newspaper. They've been published. People see them and say, oh, that's nice, okay. I've written to the city councils. You get very little, I've got to have your help. We've got to support libraries and make our library colleagues our allies and work with them and support them. The more we do for libraries, let me tell you what we know about libraries. The better the library in schools, the better the school library, the higher the reading scores. Keith Curry-Lentz's research. That's amazing. My colleagues and I looked at the PIRLS test, P-I-R-L-S. It's an international test given to fourth graders, 10-year-old children in 40 countries around the world, standardized in your own language. When the test comes out, the newspapers always are interested in who won. You know, did France beat England? Did Italy beat Germany? Did Taiwan beat China? My friend Alfie Cohn says the scores should be reported in the sports section, really. We looked at the data though. Here's what we found. Poverty was the best predictor of reading scores. No question. No, overwhelmingly. High poverty, low scores. If you bring in the library and you put that in your equation, in one study we did, the presence of a library made up for the effect of poverty. It balanced it. That means the library can save these children from illiteracy. The second study, not so good, but pretty good. The library made up for 40% of the loss of poverty. Support the library. That's my big comment. It's the answer to everything. Librarians are there to help. They have the books, the kids can come in. I know the libraries do other things, they tell stories, that's wonderful, but they also bring the kids in to play games, etc. It's the books that count. Okay, do we have any time for discussion, questions? I've told you everything.
Yes, we have some time for questions.
Okay, good. I am ready.
Are you done?
I am done. I can ask the questions too, and you guys can answer them. How's that?
Yes.
Like in school.
Do you know some words in Arabic?
In Arabic? No, I don't know too many words, Habibi. Not very many. I'm sorry. Just a couple. What's interesting is when I was in Saudi Arabia 2 years ago, I know Amharic and I know Hebrew. So I was understanding about 5, 7, 8, 9, 10%, just enough to get the flavor and get the urge to know more.
Good. So let's say, for example, that I am a language teacher and I always keep teaching certain grammar structures, okay? And they don't get stuck in the student's mind. And I keep repeating them. I keep repeating the same rules over and over again. And as you said, they drop the third person singular. They, instead of have, they use has. This is a regular process. Okay, as a language teacher, do you think I should not focus a lot on grammar structures?
Right.
And do a lot of readings, maybe a lot of listening?
Yes, I would follow Beniko Mason's path. I would begin with stories, and I would add this reading program. Can you still hear me? Because I've lost you. No.
Yes. I can hear.
You can still hear me though. That's good. Okay, there we are. If older kids are interested in grammar, I'll tell you something interesting. One teacher who was trained by Tracy Terrell, who was wonderful, she was teaching Spanish, and she put in some time, her office time, where kids could come by and ask grammar questions. And in case they were interested, she'd be happy to explain it. And then I asked her, how many questions did you get? She said, oh, about 8 or 9. 8 or 9 every week? No, 8 or 9 all year. People really don't care. They say they want grammar, but it's not there. This is a good place to, I think, do some studies, do some research. Do they really want it? A few do, but not very many. I would still do some. I would do a little bit of grammar, a little bit of help for the monitor, and a little bit of language appreciation so they can understand what they've acquired. And they see they have the power to pick these things up through comprehensible input. And it's also for super advanced students, I would teach grammar as subject matter with the goal of teaching Chomsky's theory. Universals, this wonderful hypothesis. If something is universal, it's innate. We are born knowing it. If we know that, if someone demonstrates that all languages have pronouns, you are born somehow knowing the concept of pronoun, and you expect it in language acquisition. And that explains why people acquire languages so rapidly, for one reason. So I would include it, but peripheral, very peripheral.
Yes, okay. So the idea is teaching grammar, not so much. Sometimes because, yes, sometimes because I wonder what's the purpose of teaching grammar anyway? Students keep making the same mistakes. What's the purpose?
No, it's not. It's the only way they're going to stop making mistakes is more acquisition, more input, not from grammar.
Yes. So how can we use the what you call the affective filter by, for example, creating activities in which
reading and stories, reading and stories, reading and stories. Activities will not give you all the language you need. Songs will not give you all the language you need. We need input comprehensible, extremely interesting. Benico Mason says rich. That means there's lots of context and lots of interesting stories that makes input comprehensible, and there's a lot of it. Just activities don't do that. Occasionally for break.
Yes, you said I+. Should
I+,
we design you said the comprehensible input, the I+. Do you mean by this that we need to design activities that are within the...
No, let me tell you something really sensational. If you give people lots of comprehensible input, I+1 is there. You don't have to make sure it's there. You don't have to design activities. It's always there. That's wonderful. So if you're, let's say you really feel you have to get the next grammatical structure, just keep reading. It's going to be there, inevitably.
Yes. What makes the brain so slow in absorbing the structure? Is it something
not
psychological?
slow. It's very fast. It's just that we do it in a different order. We are constantly acquiring all the time. You can't stop. But you're not acquiring it in the same order that's in the textbook.
It's unconsciously.
All of it, yes.
Okay, yes. I'm also curious about the learned system vs the especially in grammar. We keep talking about grammar. The learned system or learning is the product of formal instruction.
No. Nope. It's comprehensible input, not instruction. Instruction only gives you conscious knowledge, and that plays a very tiny, tiny role in understanding and speaking language. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, that's a problem.
Good questions. They're right on target.
Yes. So the purpose now is to use the affective filter, as you said, in order to make students feel less nervous.
Right? There's
Because
an easy way to do that, though. Very easy way to keep
yes.
the affective filter low. Make input compelling.
How?
Make input very
Like,
interesting.
you mean make my way of teaching compelling, or the input?
Tell stories. Tell stories. Have them read good books. Best way.
Okay, yes. So is there a certain what do we call it? A certain comparison between your theory of the I+1 and with the ZPD, the zone of proximal development?
Yeah, people have mentioned that. Yeah, they are similar. Zone of proximal development was not invented for language. It was invented for cognitive development, okay? So I'm not sure they're exactly the same, but it is roughly a similar idea, no question.
Yeah, they are the same. So we should, you said that the input should, is at or a little above the learner's level of competence.
Yes, but I want to make it easier. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
If you make sure it's comprehensible, if you make sure it's very interesting, here's your progress. It'll go up, down, up, down. I+1 will be there. You don't have to worry about it. Read a good book. Automatically, read a good book. There'll be lots of I+1. Don't go looking for I+1. Don't try to make sure you put I+1 in. It's there.
It's like if when the brain intervenes in these things, learning doesn't happen. But when there is some kind of subconscious process, the learning happens.
Yep, it's always subconscious. It's happening and you don't know it. You're
Yes.
focused on the story, you're focused on the message.
Yes. So the best idea is to, to design a lesson plan around the story, for example.
Thank you. You got it. Let's see. Like in Spanish, I know a lot about Spanish grammar. I'm a linguist. I can't help it. But I don't think about it ever. If I see a new rule, I don't write it down. I don't try to remember it. I keep reading, keep listening. It's going to come back again and again. You can't avoid it. It's so simple.
Yeah, but some languages differ in terms of complexity, right?
Right. Well, it doesn't matter as long as it's interesting and comprehensible.
For example, German verbs are all over the place. It's not like...
Yeah, those things, the German verb system, all those endings are late acquired. So when we make students speak with accuracy, you can't get anything done. Just relax, let the errors happen, keep reading, keep listening. Gradually, you'll get it. They all come naturally to me now. I never think about them, I get them right. From all the reading I've done, all the listening.
So if we can relate this to assessment, do you think schools should reconsider the way they assess students based on grades?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think we should eliminate any test of speaking because, first of all, it's very hard to do. It's hard to make a reliable speaking test. Everyone disagrees what it's supposed to do. And if you have a speaking test, students will practice speaking, and that's not going to make them better. Speaking is the result of listening and reading. So I would say just eliminate it. Just test listening, test reading. I would also not test writing. Writing style comes from reading. It's the only place. And if students write more, they won't be better writers. They won't be more accurate. That's what the research says. So right away, I've just eliminated 50% of testing. Don't test writing. Don't test speaking. Students are going to love it because those are very anxiety provoking. They make people nervous. I would just go with listening and reading, and that's plenty.
And writing, no?
Pardon?
Writing, no?
Writing, no writing. No test of writing because it's the result of reading. Now, let me give you a long footnote, a long explanation. Writing for accuracy, that comes from reading. But writing itself is very good. Writing helps thinking. When you write something down and you read it again and you make changes and you make changes, you're learning. You're figuring things out. Everything becomes clear. So revision is very important. You go draft after draft. And look, the paper I'm writing now, I've gone through 6 drafts. Each draft, each time I go through it, I see new things. I see new things. I'm learning as I go. But that's not language. That's intellectual. That's creativity. So I would not test writing.
Yes, so it is as if each time you write, you become another person. Each version.
You get new ideas. Yes.
You get new ideas, you edit, you revise, you.
Exactly. Revision is the core, really. When I have to revise, which is all the time, I'm happy because I'm learning something new.
When you mean you're revising others' papers?
When I read my work and I see a mistake, I revise. I'm very happy because I'm learning.
Yes.
This happens to everybody here.
Yes. So mistakes are after all good.
Mistakes in logic, yes. Mistakes in thinking, yes. You find your argument isn't working, you clarify it, you make a better argument. Einstein did this all the time. I read a book called Einstein's Errors. He would submit a paper and then get it published, and the next year rewrite the paper, send it in again, said last year was wrong, new paper. Then the next year he would write the paper again. Last year was wrong. He did it 5 times. This is how he was progressing, a good example. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. That's Noam Chomsky says that. Keep working, you gradually find the answer. Revision after revision after revision. All scholars go through this, everybody, and it's good. I accept it and it's comfortable.
Yes.
But that's not language.
So mistakes help us gain knowledge, I guess.
For knowledge, yes. I will send you a paper on this and please feel free to share it with everybody.
Yes, of course, yes. So there is, so is the natural order of acquiring the second language affected by the first one?
I don't know. It really hasn't been worked out. Different languages are usually quite similar. The natural order is surprisingly stable across languages, but there are certain places where you wonder where the first language might be causing an influence. But in general, there's little variation among languages. It's pretty much the same. Like virtually everyone who acquires English gets the ing marker early, gets the third person singular late. So for the most part, they're similar.
So, but the L1 intervenes, affects the way we learn the second language. The L1, for example, my L1 is Arabic.
Yeah,
and
of course it does. Yes, here's where the first language intervenes. You are a beginning student of English. You want to say something complicated, but your English isn't good enough. What you do is you use Arabic grammar and you put in English vocabulary. It's a strategy to get your sentence out. It doesn't help you, but it will solve the problem. So if I'm speaking, let's say, I don't know, if I'm speaking Spanish and I can't think of how to say something, I'll think in English, put in English vocabulary, and hope that it works. It's a strategy for solving your problem.
Yes. Do you have any? Yes. Do you have any idea? Yes. Do you have any ideas about immersion? When some people say that the best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in the culture, in movies. No?
It has to be comprehensible. You're much better off in a very good language class than being in the country unless you're quite advanced. You have to have people who are going to talk to you. It has to be interesting. You have to be surrounded by language all day. And sometimes you're better off going to your room and reading a good book. You get much more comprehensible input. And we have papers we've written on this, where we've looked at gains of people in a good language class and people who go to the country. It depends. The experience I had in Austria was great immersion because I made lots of friends. I did lots of interaction, did interesting things, and I read a lot.
Beside
I read
that.
lots and lots of easy German. I think that's what did it.
So reading helps you acquire the language.
Yep, it's through reading. Spanish, I have never lived in a Spanish-speaking country. My Spanish is, it's okay, not bad. Through reading, reading, reading. I think that's more powerful.
But today's learners not most of them like reading. They watch
haven't
movies.
found the right books yet.
Okay, with
That's
graphics.
why I like comic books. Comic books. Oh yes, wonderful. And they're not easy. They're just very well written and they're exciting.
Yes.
But they're also expensive.
They make you relaxed.
Pardon?
They make you relaxed and less nervous.
Oh yeah, well good reading does that.
Yes.
Good reading calms you down, makes you relaxed, etc. That's why so many people read before they go to sleep at night. It's an addiction. They say, I have to read a half an hour. I have to read 10 minutes before I go to sleep. It does take your mind away from the cares of life. You're in another world. It's wonderful.
So do you have any pieces of advice for the Moroccan teachers?
Try this out. Don't do everything all at once. Frank Smith says, do a little more of what's right and a little less of what's wrong. And I have not provided you with a curriculum for sale with book 1, book 2 to make it easy, because we're just discovering this now, okay? We're just getting the idea. But I would try to include more reading, more stories.
So we are still learning about this.
We're still learning. One of my experiences was learning Hebrew. I went to Israel and I spent 5 months on the kibbutz, the farm, and I did Hebrew class. It was 3 hours a day of Hebrew and 3 hours a day of working in the fields. Quite nice. The Hebrew teacher, it was grammar in those days, it's a long time ago, but she was very charming, but the last 30 minutes, she told us Bible stories in simple Hebrew. And she was wonderful. That's where I got Hebrew, looking back on it. It was the good stories that did it.
Yes, the good stories, yes.
And when I worked on the kibbutz, I would work with Israelis on the kibbutz, and we would have conversations, but I couldn't get too advanced because my Hebrew wasn't that good. I was better off listening to those stories and trying to find things to read in Hebrew, which is hard to do.
You said that at the end you will tell me about the languages that you speak.
Yeah, I did. It began with German. I did French in high school, then German. And then in Ethiopia, I did Amharic, the language of the country, a Semitic language, which I did okay, but it was hard to find things to read and hard to find people who would talk simply to me. I needed a good class where the teacher would talk easily, and I didn't have that, okay? So my progress was slow, but I got better gradually. It would have been 5 years before I got any good. After that, I did French because I did some work in Canada, which was lots of fun. I found the languages where I have had easy reading, I've done very well. The languages where I couldn't find easy reading, I haven't done well.
Yes.
So if you want people to be interested in Arabic, you need easy books, good stories.
Okay, I'm just curious. Some people say that, for example, I meet a lot of friends. They say that they speak this language, they speak that language. Is there a certain criteria, for example, for somebody that we should say that he or she speaks a certain language?
And it's a very good idea to explain when you say that. Like I can tell you, I speak German fairly well. I can, pretty well, actually. I can talk about anything I want. I may make an occasional mistake, but I can read the newspapers. I'm pretty good. And I can go to a lecture if it's in my field, and understand what's going on. And I've done that and it's fine. French, not quite there. Spanish, the things I don't understand.
French is complicated.
Pardon?
I think French is very complicated. It's not easy to learn.
They're all the same. If you're just comprehending it, it all comes naturally.
Because we have French in Morocco, we have it.
I know.
We study it from very early age, but we most of us still make the same mistakes. Most of us don't know how to communicate, how to.
You have to find easy books to read. Lots of easy books, Le Petit Nicolas, stuff like that. Don't go into the classics. Read easy things. Oh, what's his name? I can recommend my favorite author whose name I keep forgetting. I read science fiction in French. That's all I read. And I found a couple of authors that are just wonderful. And the books are very thick. And I've been reading them for years. And that's basically what I read. And I don't stop because they're terrific. And he comes out with new ones.
Okay, yes.
Read narrowly in areas you like. I read a little French every night from his books. Mostly I've been reading Spanish lately. But it's hard to find anything. It's hard to find any books in other languages that are comprehensible. So it's not the fault of Moroccans that they don't speak beautiful French. It's not your fault at all. It's the lack of good reading material.
I think it's the passion. It has to do with the passion. For example, I taught myself English. I was passionate to learn English. So, I watched a lot of American films.
Good.
And American shows and cartoons. You said you love cartoons.
Yes.
Like my favorite one was Family Guy and Simpsons and.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. You're on the right track.
I picked a lot of language from those those movies and those cartoons.
And when you watch cartoons, like you watch 10 episodes of Family Guy, there's the same context, the same characters. That helps.
Yes.
So narrow reading, narrow listening.
I am watching not because I want to learn. I am watching because I am enjoying myself. And
exactly.
Maybe this has to do what you have mentioned with the affective filter. And when we are nervous, yes, when we are nervous, we don't learn.
Okay. Well, I'll send you the name of the French author.
Yes, thank you.
In a little bit about writing.
Yes. Do you think maybe you can pay?
Well, the name of the guy is Bernard Weber. Werber. Thanks, Nishant.
Bernard?
Weber. Werber.
Yes. Okay.
He has a set, Werber. He has a set of 3 books about ants, the kingdom of the ants, les fourmis. It's fabulous. You are right there with the ants. He has a set of 3 books about life after death called les thanonautes, like astronauts going to the other side, au-delà, all that. It's science fiction, but not the usual kind, a little more exciting, I think.
Yes. Okay, do you think maybe in the future of paying us a little visit?
I don't know. Look at what we're going through. I'd love to, sure. Only on one condition, though. You have to buy me lots of free coffee, then I'll come.
So here in Morocco, we drink tea, a lot of tea, but it's okay.
I know you do. That's why I mentioned it. That's why I brought it up.
No, we can. Coffee is not a problem. Coffee is available. So if we send you an invitation, you
let's see if the coronavirus goes away. Fine.
No, I'm talking about after coronavirus, not now.
Yes, of course. Sure, love to.
So we'll be happy to meet you again.
My pleasure. We have lots more to talk about.
Yes. Do you have any final comments to the Moroccan audience who is watching now?
Oh, not really. I think the questions were very, very good. I think we covered a lot.
Yes, because most of them were, they applied your theories in their research papers, their PhD papers, etc.
Yes, it's very good because the questions were both theoretical and applied at the same time. And that's really the best way to do research. Think about application and then you question the theory. Very good. I like doing that.
Yes. One maybe one final comment. Are there any certain common points between you and Chomsky?
Many, many, many. Now I have to say, Chomsky doesn't do what I do. I don't do what he does. He does grammatical theory, and I have found that his theory of language is extremely compatible with my work. And we agreed when we talked that explicit knowledge of language does not play much of a role in language teaching. That's for sure. And he was very comfortable with that. My graduate school was UCLA, which was the center of Chomskyan research. And basically my graduate education was reading Chomsky. So,
really?
Oh, that was it. In linguistics, that's all we did. I have a degree in linguistics. So I wrote papers on grammatical theory to get my degree, etc. So that I'm sure that gave me a deep understanding and appreciation of Chomsky's work, which I think is absolutely brilliant.
But you said he's compatible with some of your theory.
Yes, very compatible. I think, okay, the idea of a language acquisition device and innateness, yes. I think that's true. And it's present in adults too. It doesn't go away. The Chomskyan universals are there when you're 70 years old. Yes. That's the point. Yes. Without Chomsky, I would have nothing to do. I would have no theory. It all started there.
Okay, Chomsky was like a source of inspiration for you. We can say that?
Yes, a foundation, yeah. He's the only intellectual I have ever heard of who is famous for work in two different areas, politics and language acquisition. Completely, that doesn't happen. That's very rare in the history of science. It's quite something. And it's very clear in both, very clear contributions.
Okay, nice to hear that. I also learned that he is your friend.
No, I don't know him. I met him once on a webinar about a month ago. First time we ever met.
I saw that webinar.
No,
I saw that webinar.
Sorry?
I saw that webinar. I saw it.
Oh, you saw that? Oh,
yeah.
It was so much fun. It was really exciting for me. I regard him as a true living master. No question.
So you did some sort of interview with him.
Yeah, you saw it. It's a 6-minute interview.
Yes, I saw some of it.
That's it. We have never met other than that.
You have never met him?
No, we haven't met. I don't call him up, let's go have dinner. No, we never do that.
Yeah, you're honest. So maybe you told me earlier that you have a PhD in grammar.
Did I have a what?
You said you have a PhD in grammar.
Yes, everybody in linguistics has a PhD. It's basically grammatical theory. That's what I did. So I followed, it was Chomskyan grammar all the way through. When I came to USC, which was I think 1966, that was the beginning of the Chomskyan revolution. Syntactic structures had just come out about 5 years before that, or a little bit before that. Chomsky gave a lecture at the University of Texas in the early 60s, and that one changed linguistics entirely. UCLA faculty came to that lecture, and the next day they were teaching Chomsky's work in their syntax courses. It was that sudden. It was a scientific revolution that happened nearly immediately, and we all profited from it. Chomsky brought theory to linguistics. Before Chomsky, there was only description. Now there are hypotheses to test. He made it scientific, and that's when you make progress. That was the
so he was like, yes, good. So he was like the foundation on which everything comes later.
That's right. Without it, I could not have done my work. I can't say that adults can acquire language if we don't know about language acquisition. And he's the one who told us what it is. He didn't talk about comprehensible input, anything like that. That was my job. So we do different things. I'm sure he doesn't know my work very well. He doesn't have to. His work has been brilliant.
And yours also is super brilliant.
Well, thank you. Tell me more.
No, you have millions of fans around the world.
Well, I'll tell you about that. That's partly true. I have the most citations of anybody in my field, but I think about 2/3 of them are criticisms, saying I'm wrong. Very popular thing to do, okay? But I'm still here. My critics are gone. They come and go. So, and you answer the ones that are really interesting and you make progress. Some of the critics I would call the loyal opposition. They ask the good questions and they really want to know. So I'd say most of them have been very good.
They ask the good questions.
Yeah, that's important.
So why you labeled your citations as criticism? You said most of them are as criticism.
Yeah, well, some people just are insulting and say, you're stupid, why didn't you do it my way, that kind of thing. But not very many. Most of them are okay. Most of them are okay. And that comes with the territory. It comes with the profession. And what I do when a criticism comes, which is about once a week, used to be more often than that, you go through the criticisms like a review of your paper, an article in a journal, and you first find the ones where you absolutely agree. Then you find the points of disagreement and see if it's a responsible criticism. Is it answerable? Is it possible to find the answer? I do those immediately. Or when they've misunderstood, I have to simply explain. Then you resubmit the paper and move on. You don't just let it sit on your desk and make you angry.
You know what, people will talk. So, some people's job is just talking criticism for the sake of criticism, without any knowledge. They just talk, they just criticize without any knowledge. And most of them are in the field of language teaching and learning.
They're in the field?
Yes, they just criticize this theory and that theory and.
Yeah, let me read you a paragraph written by Theodore Roosevelt, which has helped me a lot. President of the United States, about 100 years ago. And it's about criticism. And it's called The Man in the Arena. This one really helped me when I was getting lots and lots of criticism. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the other stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the one who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, makes mistakes, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement. And at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So his place will never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So many of the critics are like that.
Oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah, they're cold, timid souls who don't do anything. And the critics have pretty well come and go. They're a changing cast, but we're still here doing the work. That one really was good therapy to hear that. And you know what? Chomsky says this many times. There's nothing wrong with being wrong.
There's nothing wrong with being wrong.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. Is it poetry?
No, I'll send it to you. It's from a speech that Roosevelt gave in 1910.
It sounds like poetry.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's beautiful. I'll send that to you today.
Okay, so we would like really to talk to you forever. You are really full of knowledge.
Well, we will continue another time.
Yes, maybe we'll program another session.
If you like, I can talk only about writing and only about research and publication. Very good topics.
Yes, yes, that's my favorite one. I struggle a lot with writing.
Good. Good. Then we'll have a lot. I'll send you what the papers are, and you can decide.
I always feel that I have to be a better writer. I am always working on this. It's
You
a
have to be a
continuous
useful
process.
writer. Albert Einstein said, you know, the goal, what you want, is to do things that are useful to other people. And that has influenced my writing. In academia, the way we pay our rent is by publication. The way we pay our dues to society, pay back what society has given to us. Publication is the only way we can do it. That's how we contribute to knowledge. And you can't do it if you're on the defense all the time.
Yes, I loved what you said at the very beginning. You said that there is some sort of defending the libraries. You know, the libraries
You have to do that. Yes.
are no longer receiving money. So that's a huge problem.
Oh, yes. I do a lot of writing for the public domain too, on issues like that.
Yes.
Very important.